Hello everybody, my name is Danotage and welcome to a brand new World video. Once again, I'll remind you that this is a pre-release New World video, so there's going to be some closed beta information in here. It's not going to be fully done, there's going to be some things that change, but I think this video specifically will be pretty accurate to what you're going to see in the final result. I think for the most part, it'll be okay. So, before I get into it, once again, if you enjoyed everything that's happened here and you've enjoyed anything in the video, or if you just like these tutorial videos and these introduction into what it is that you're getting into, please drop a like and subscribe to the channel. It helps a ton. It's not just for, you know, my ego. It actually helps people see these videos, which is super helpful. And I'll tell you right now that if you're fighting in a faction, I keep saying Covenant because that's the faction I've been playing with. If you're fighting in a faction, you want people to see these videos so that hopefully they know a little bit about it and they could get advanced stuff before they get into it. So today we are talking about crafting combos. So you can do everything in the game. You can do every single piece of crafting, every single piece of smelting and gathering and refining and all of it. But especially when you start the game and everybody else may be starting the game, you may want to focus on a couple things. And even if you're just brand new, you may want to focus on a couple things. Or maybe you want to focus on one craft or two crafts. You may want to know what sort of ties you can make so that you are not wasting a bunch of time doing things you're never going to use. Or at least not going to use for a while. So this video is going to be very focused on if you are going to do this craft, you may want to focus on this type of gathering skill. So I hope you find this interesting and let's get right into it. Alright, so there's a few things that you may want to get into when you first start this game. As we've talked about, this is very open. There's many things you can do. There are many things that are available to you. There are very many things that you can pick and choose and swap between and not really commit yourself to anything. However, also, like we've talked about, committing yourself to something does help your faction pretty early on. If you join late, or you don't really feel like helping your faction right at the beginning, you just kind of want to test out the game and play it out and see how you want to do it. Here in New World, you can do exactly that. You can go along and really just do whatever you want. But something you may want to know in order to streamline what you have going on are some combos that you might want to put together. So, as you can see here, we have all the different trade skills. I've leveled up quite a bit of them. We've only hit 201 of them. We've just kind of been testing a lot of things. But one of the things you want to do is you want to be able to draw lines to each of the connecting crafting items to refining items to gathering items, because they're all going to be in a sequence. So obviously, in order to get things to refine, you'll need stuff to craft, or you need stuff to gather. And then to be able to craft the things, you'll need to use refined goods. Most of what you find in crafting will need something that is refined. It most normally will not use a raw gathered resource. There are some, and some for the quest board, or the town hall quest board, town board in general, that require some like raw iron, and some cloth, and, you know, basic stuff. But for the most part, if you're going to be using stuff to craft whatever, you're going to need something that is refined. In order to refine something, you'll need something that is raw. I would say for the most part, if you're looking to purchase some of these items because maybe your crafting level isn't high enough, or maybe you need something real quick and you don't really want to spend the time leveling your gathering, and I don't really blame you, gathering is very slow, and then refining is probably the quickest, I'd say, followed by crafting. Crafting and refining, they level around the same speed. Gathering, however, is simply you run across whatever you run across and you level that up there. Fishing is extremely slow because the act of fishing is pretty slow. But you get a lot of good cooking stuff and some other things with fishing that is pretty nice. Fishing will get you a few things, but we're about to get directly into that. So let's start at the beginning. Weaponsmithing. So if you look at weaponsmithing, there are a ton of tools and weapons you get to actually make. Well, no tools, but specifically weapons. Tools of war, might you say. These in most games, weaponsmithing and armorsmithing they kind of feel like a waste of time because it's like, I'm just gonna get, gray items that really don't do much. Well, I'll tell you right now that I would personally start to encourage people to look into weaponsmithing and armorsmithing in New World. Because while you can create very common and just normal weapons, you can also put a lot into them that allows you to get some really nice things. So if you look here, you'll have stuff like the Iron Sword, but you can add Azoth, which upgrades your tier level, so you get attributes of certain perks. So you get attributes to go higher based on your chance, based on how much Azoth, or what you can actually pick a specific perk that adds to it as well. You can do all kinds of stuff, which is fantastic and very deep. So you'll be able to create weapons and whatnot. So pay attention to exactly what pairs that we're talking about here. So as you can see, it's mostly iron and wood for the most part. As you level up, you'll need steel, and then as you can tell, one of the better pairs of gathering is probably going to be mining. In fact, mining works for a lot of things. So mining has iron, not so much silver. Silver's very much going to be for a different one, but mining and gold and star metal and iron turns into steel, which you're probably going to need some wood for, but you don't need to worry too much about wood until you start working on bows and later more wood-specific weapons. For the most part, you're going to be focusing on metals. So your best friend for a weaponsmith or even an armorsmith is going to be mining. And as you can see, as we move on to armoring, you're going to see a lot of things that are part of linen and leather. So that's skinning and gathering. So weaponsmithing, mostly mining, but armorsmithing, kind of a little bit of everything. Not to mention, you're going to be looking at just a whole bunch of different perks that go into this. So if you focus on mining and you want to go weaponsmithing, you're going to do a really good job at doing that. Armoring, you can kind of do the same thing as well, but the reason that they make it a little bit more complex is because there's a lot of clothing in this game that gives you better luck into fishing and cooking and armoring, and basically a lot of the clothing is a lot like food and cooking, to where you're going to get a lot of luck bonuses. So it's a little bit more complicated, but for the most part at the beginning it's very simple. So keep that in mind, that cloth and gathering and wood and leather is all going to be part of armoring, but for the most part it's very basic, so don't worry too much about it. So as long as you keep with your mining, which goes directly to smelting, mining is directly smelting. There's a pretty distinct connection between these here. But those two are important early game, if you ask me, because you can do some really cool stuff. However, they're important to do early game because it takes a while for them to be useful. So unless you want to spend a bunch of time when you decide you really want some better gear or some better armor, you might want to start on these early. And in order to start on those early, you might want to start leveling up your mining and your gathering. And maybe a little bit of logging. Not too much, but a little bit of logging. If you go into engineering, you have a similar set to both the armoring and the weaponsmithing, but for the most part, it's going to be metal. The big thing is metal. You'll need a little bit of wood and you'll need a little bit of cloth to help build the things, but for the most part, you're working on metal because it kind of upgrades in that fashion. As you've seen, we've been able to get a couple of things here. So we just built some star metal here, and that was built by putting together star metal, which took us up to 100 mining with some 100 engineering. So we had to kind of level those semi-evenly, but I didn't, so it took me a while to get to the point where I needed to be. But the big thing and the way we were able to get so many things onto it was because I had to level it up by doing quite a bit of other things. Like one of the easiest ways to get that going is probably going to be at the beginning, building tools for people, but most people won't want tools or have already made their own. But building arrows and iron cartridges, which are simple They take a lot to give you levels, and they kind of fill up your inventory, so be careful on that. But again, this is very much going to be wood. Feathers, which is harvesting, or sorry, which is hunting and gathering and tracking. So you may want a little bit of that, but that's pretty basic as well. Like, a lot of these things you want to pair nicely, but for the most part, you're using basic materials. And this game is very much focused on getting you to do a little bit of everything, so it's okay. But I would still say the main pair for engineering would be mining. You need tracking and skinning, you need harvesting, you need logging, but for the most part, you're not going to be using high levels of those. Mining, you're going to be using high levels of it. Keep in mind, though, that if you want to make really good stuff, and you want to make high quality materials and have better chances for more perks, not only does Azoth become a factor, but you have things where you can change which materials go into it as well. So if I want to create iron here, because I've added filters that says I can't mine at this station. As you can see, this station is only workshop tier 2, so we can't do things like the star metal or the steel, because the town just didn't upgrade these tools, or these benches. So if I stick this here, I have a few options. These are the basic things I need, but for the most part, I'm going to get a pretty low score, so I'm going to get the bare minimum, which doesn't allow you to really sell it, because most people are going to be able to make that no matter what. If you want to make something really nice, you can get some food and some cloth or some gear that helps you get this score to be a little bit better, but also you can change the materials. So I have timber. The next tier is timber's tier 2. The next tier is 3. That's going to up my score a bit. So it went from 220 to 275, and it changed my minimum to 225 to 275, which is big because that means you don't have that chance to roll a 220. And those 5 points can make a difference. If I went up to Wordwood, it would go up to 230 to 275. However, as you can see, iron by itself has a maximum, and that maximum really doesn't change. So paying attention to that is very, very useful. You can also have custom perks as well. And then you can even go further and go to layered leather, which brings that up to 240. And the higher and higher chance you get your minimum to go to, the better and better the tool is just going to be. So if you're beginning this, and we put this in our intro video, intro to the game video, how to upgrade and level up yourself while using that to gain gold, is by pretty much doing something like this and using the best materials you possibly can, which you do by leveling up your gathering skills. You can make some pretty good stuff, and you can sell that on the market, and more than likely people are going to buy it because they're sitting there going, well, this tool is cool and I made it and whatever, but there are just better tools on the trading post that I definitely want to be using. So keeping that in mind is very, very powerful tool for beginning what you want to begin. So let's go to the next skill. We have jewel crafting. Jewel crafting comes with making a lot of amulets and pieces that allow you to buff your stats. It's important to realize that you do not get access to these slots until later. So like, I believe it's something like 25, 35, and 45 that allow you to even slot these items. So you may not want to go too hard on jewel crafting at the beginning to get so high up that you're not even able to sell it or use it or any part of it. So, but you still want to level it. So the best way to do that is to also be a miner. If you're a miner and you have, let's say, clothing or food that allows you better mining luck, you're going to get these stones like amber and like amethyst and et cetera, et cetera. They all do different things, but the most important part is that you're going to be able to cut them. And once you cut them, you can then slot those into a piece of jewelry. The jewelry is a little bit difficult because there's a lot of stuff that goes into making jewelry, but for the most part, you're going to need silver. And that's also where I kind of say you don't need to necessarily pair mining with jewel crafting, because silver can be crafted and found and mined pretty early on. So if we go to mining, you need 10. You need to be level 10, which really isn't much. Level 10 is like maybe, I don't know, 100 iron nodes, and that's being generous. So 100 iron nodes will get you to silver. That's pretty quick. So silver is really all you need to get started in that. But then later on, you're going to be making stuff like emerald, or not emerald, sorry, like asmodium. So you'll need the asmodium chains to make good stuff. You'll need orichalcum. So as you can see with those, that's going to be very high level. So I'm not even there yet, and I've been doing a lot. Orichalcum at 175, platinum, which goes into jewelry, I believe as well, at 110, etc. And then the other ones are alloys, which is very important. So mining is huge when it comes to jewel crafting later on. If you want to do jewel crafting early, you're not going to be able to use a lot of high level stuff for even yourself or even anybody else in the world for quite a bit. It's going to take a little bit to get up there. So I wouldn't worry too much about getting jewel crafting or getting your mining up too fast, because your jewel crafting is going to take a little bit. Plus, in my opinion, jewel crafting is a lot of fun because there are a lot of different things and a lot of different ways you can get your stuff to work. So if you're working on jewel crafting, you're gonna level that up pretty quickly anyway, because you'll sit there and say, well, I made 10 flawed carnelian amulets, which I'm trying to get something for my healer to generate less threat, because carnelian is a threat gem, and it can, based on the roll, it can either be causing more threat for your tank or less threat for your healer, or any of your DPS for that matter. So let's say I made 20 carnelian amulets, and they're all plus hate, so they're going to be gaining more aggro. Well, you've got a lot of levels in your jewel crafting, but you didn't really get what you want. So you're going to get that anyway, because one, you're probably going to keep trying to make more amulets, and you're just going to keep getting XP. But again, you can't really do that until you start mining. So it's important to think about that. And if you think about that in that way, you're probably going to get mining up pretty quickly anyway, but it's still the ultimate pair. So keep that in mind. Next is Arcana. Arcana is a few things, actually. So Arcana is where you make weapons that are magical. As you can go back to Weaponsmithing, you'll notice that you cannot make staves and you cannot make gauntlets here. So a lot in the same vein, if you want to be a weaponsmith, it's not really that bad or that much of a deterrent to also be somebody who works on Arcana. Arcana in the same vein is going to also attach to mining, but it's also going to attach to a few other things. And more importantly, although it depends on what you're trying to make, more importantly, you're going to be making potions. Potions happen to be extremely powerful in many different situations. Common regeneration potions in general are highly useful for everybody. So not only does it slowly regenerate your health, but for healers and magic users, it regenerates your mana, which is very important for somebody like myself who doesn't have a whole lot of intelligence on my character. It's mostly strength or constitution. I'm going to be using quite a bit of stamina. So I'm going to be using it a lot, and I'm just going to flamethrow and do all these things. It's going to be crazy. So I'm going to need some potions. So I'm going to need some of my company members or my faction members to help me with that. So Arcana is very important for everybody. Not to mention these wisps and the motes that you get from from harvesting. That is going to be important not only for Arcana, but it's also going to be for things like stone crafting, which is going to be somewhere in the stone cutting section. Because while you are mostly crafting up here in the crafting sections, there's going to be things in, I believe actually it might only be stone cutting, maybe a little bit of weaving as well. But stone cutting does allow you to do a couple things for expeditions specifically. And in order to utilize those, you're going to have other skills available to you as well. So we'll go down here and we'll look at this. So elemental hearts. You need so many motes to be able to make one. And that's all harvesting. So with normal motes, you're not going to need high level harvesting, but it does help because you can allow yourself to get more perks and bonuses that way. If you look at any of these other ones, they're basically the same, but you're going to be able to make these other things by leveling them up. So as you can see here, here, I'm going to clear this because there's actually a lot more things here. So these are all the tuning orbs for the specific dungeons or expeditions that you can get into. And if you look on the right here, they all require at least, well, for the most part, level 50. but some require 55 and 75, etc. By the time you get to those zones in your character level, you're probably going to get up there anyway, but again, might as well not worry too much about sticking to just doing it when you need it, right? So if you're going to worry about doing those and stone cutting, you're probably going to focus on mining anyway. You're mostly going to be getting stone and gathering stone or picking up flint, but for the most part, you'll be doing that. Not to mention, you're going to be probably doing a lot of stone cutting for certain town board quests, because town board quests often require stone bricks or stone blocks. So that's something to pay attention to as well. And if you're not doing these, and the whole reason for this video is if you're not doing them naturally, you may want to focus on getting that skill up, and that's going to come from mining as well. So next we have, I think we went over everything here. So you're going to be using these essences and whatnot to be able to pair with somebody who is also going to do jewel crafting, which you need a little bit of because it's a little magical sometimes. But for the most part, it is going to be focused on your potions. Potions are going to be the most important thing to a lot of people. So, and somebody who focuses on Arcana is going to be very, very valuable to their dungeon party, their PvP party, their solo, like people who just want to run solo and don't have a healer, what have you. It's going to be very important. Or anybody that wants to go gather slivers from the corrupted zones, you're going to need to be able to create either corruption. What are they called? We have, so corruption tinctures and corruption potions to keep you from taking too much corruption damage, but also some of the things that you could put on your blade. So coatings, that's what I'm thinking of. So common corrupted coatings is going to help big time because it'll allow you to do a lot more damage to corrupted enemies. Same with having, there's lost coatings, beast coatings. There's all kinds of different enemies, which we'll talk about in another video. But as somebody who focuses on Arcana, you're going to be either making a lot of gold, or you're going to be helping your company and faction out a lot by being high level Arcana. Cooking is something which I focused on. Harvesting is pretty much going to be your best friend. So, but the thing is, harvesting doesn't really become too hard, and you don't need too high of a level to be able to do so, or to gather them. The one thing you do need to focus on, though, is maybe getting to 20. 20 is probably your best friend, because 20 is when you start to see herbs and farm plants, like in general, fruits and vegetables and whatnot, show up on your mini bar, or your mini, the thing at the top, the compass, so that you can see them as you're walking by and collect as many as you possibly can, which is important. So cooking is huge for that, but also you're going to be wanting to fish with cooking. Fishing is huge. Fishing, the board is a little bit tough to read, and we're going to poke the devs a little bit to figure out a little bit more about what this all means. But for the most part, we've seen that the more you fish, the more hotspots you'll be able to find and see when you're walking around, which is huge because if, let's say, you're walking by a hotspot and your fishing level isn't very high, you probably missed an opportunity to get some pretty nice fish. And in late level cooking, you'll need a lot of, let's say, like for something like, what are one of the meat ones? So something like venison pot roast. It's going to want deer, and it's going to want, venison, stuff like that. Or I guess something, actually probably closer to like some of the higher tier normal foods. You're going to be wanting to use blue and green items. And if you can simply get blue and green fish by hitting a hotspot once or twice, you're already going to be a big chunk of the way there to being able to create that. Not to mention, some of the quests on the town board require some pretty interesting cooking. So you're going to need a lot of, I said again, uncommon and rare fish, which help here. Now, with the same vein, you're going to also want to work on tracking and skinning. Now, when you're just cooking normally for whatever type of buff you want, for the most part, you can switch between the two, which is why you see my tracking and skinning way higher than my fishing, because even though I need some fish fillet or some fish oil to make, oils and stuff like that, I've been able to buy those if I needed to, but I do really wish I had higher fishing because that would have helped a lot. Granted, fishing, like I said before, is one of the slower gathering skills, which we have a closed beta of 2 weeks. It's kind of hard to get fishing up, but we got a little bit, and it's kind of how it goes. I would say that if I had more time and I was able to focus on fishing a little bit more and not have to do a bunch of other things, my cooking to get to 200 was probably a lot easier, and I could probably do more in general. Furnishing is kind of all over the place. It's mostly wood. There's iron, though. There's metals. There's cloth. This is more of roleplay. It's kind of a roleplay skill. I wouldn't worry too much about it. However, there are some cool trophies and stuff you can decorate your houses with. We'll be going over houses in a future video as well. But for the most part, this is all very much roleplay and kind of... well, some of the storage chests actually do allow you more storage, so that is helpful as well. And you can probably make a lot of money by selling chests. So if you wanted to go this route, I don't think it's a bad idea. I haven't obviously done really any of it, but it is viable, and you can make a lot of money because people will want to decorate their house. I mean, it takes like sometimes up to 5,000, 2,500, maybe even more to buy your first house, depending on where you buy it and which house you choose. So people are going to want to spend that time finding furniture that they like. And then I think you have to earn your trophies, so you don't really have to worry about that. So while that's most of the crafting skills, like I said, we're probably going to talk a little bit about how these work too. If you look at smelting, a lot of these things are going to be used to make tools and whatnot through pretty much everything. Metal is probably the most important skill to have, so I think everybody's going to have a pretty high mining. However, if you don't focus on that, you're going to want to know somebody with pretty high mining to work with them as well. Woodworking is, I would say, almost as important, but it is important to see what they have here. The thing with woodworking is there's a good chance that after the closed beta, they may add more, because there's really not much to woodworking. For the most part, you're gathering green wood, which turns directly into timber. So it's tier 1 wood that goes into tier 2 wood. That's most of what you're doing. However, like we said before, you have better chances at better stuff if you're going and finding wood, or you're using lumber for stuff that could still be using timber, etc. The most important thing is going to be getting items or clothing that allows you to get better things from monsters and chests, because chests are where you're going to find the sandpaper, and where you're going to find the flux, and where you're going to find the tannin, the stuff that you need in order to refine from tier 2 to tier 3. So before you start working on getting super high in these, make sure you are still exploring, or you have enough gold to purchase some of the third item materials that you will need in order to further refine. And that's very important, because I can't tell you how many times I've sat here and said, oh, well, I gotta make lumber. I have a ton of aged wood and I have a ton of timber, but I have 0 sandpaper, or whatever it might be. Also, that was weird. That was a little bit of a visual bug. But if I don't have any sandpaper, I can't even use these two things, which then takes up so much room in your inventory, and you don't want that to happen. So no matter what you're doing as far as crafting goes, I highly recommend not standing in your settlement the entire time and just crafting, because more than likely you're going to run out of stuff, or you're going to run out of gold in order to buy that stuff. Now, you can make it work if you're lucky and people are just buying stuff from you, which is very nice. So being able to get a high skill really early and then using that to make a gold by selling it is very useful, but that is relying on people really needing those things. So be careful with that. Weaving is the same thing. A lot of these are kind of the same. You're going to be looking at turning low-level materials into high-level materials. But you're going to need silk weave, and you're going to need wire weave and cross weave. Those are the things that are going to help you refine even further. Stone cutting, like we said before, is a little different. Instead of needing a catalyst or another piece to upgrade, you're going to need tons of stone. And stone can be found, like we said, through any ore vein. And pretty much, I would say for the most part, it'll be very expensive, but most people aren't going to use stones, in my opinion. They might, in my opinion, make a mistake and be like, oh, I'm just going to cut this onyx and slot it right into my weapon. When it's like, or you could get somebody to cut like high level stuff and put that into a piece of jewelry so you don't have to keep swapping your slotted items too much. But people are going to do it, and that's just how it's going to go. So, you know, that's why I think getting early into jewel crafting will help with not using a waste of time with gems and everything. That for the most part, that is the pairings of how crafting works and the pairings of how refining and gathering, comboing together really works. If you want to look deeper into where to find things, we'll probably do a video on that. I'm not going to do any like, oh, this is the best way, this is the best route to get all the metal you ever need. In fact, they've done such a good job with from the alpha to the beta in showing that you can kind of go to almost any zone and find what you need to without having to worry about going to one exact zone. Is very useful, so it'll be there. There are areas that don't have any iron, and there are areas that have tons of iron. So noting that in your work log or whatever you want, maybe on a piece of paper, is quite important for you as well. And that will also help you determine what zone you want to put all your materials in, because you can only put so much. So, once again, if you enjoyed this video and you would like to see more, please subscribe to the channel. If you liked it, give it a like. If you disliked it, give it a dislike. If there's something that you saw that you didn't know before, well then, I did my job. So, hopefully that was it. And if there's nothing that you learned, then please let me know what you would like to know in the comments. So, until next time, I'll see you all. Goodbye.